So are you in a career slump? If it's the case, we're going to talk about how you can shake yourself out of it. And my name is Peggy van der Plas, and thank you for being in the podcast. So you feel stuck professionally. That has happened to me a lot. Maybe you've been out of the job market, whether it was forced, whether it was by choice, and you're having a hard time getting back in. Maybe you are working, but things are not going as well as you hoped they would. So what can you do to shake yourself out of it and get your mojo back? And again, I've been myself in that situation more than once, whether forced out of the market, stepping away by choice, or simply feeling unsatisfied. I have tested just about all the configuration of a career slump. And so here is what has worked for me. So the first thing I want you to ask yourself is, what is really going on? And what I mean by that is sometimes your collateral damage. Your collateral damage of a bad economic environment, your collateral damage of changing market needs, or a fossilized or nepotistic ecosystem. So in short, macro and microeconomic factors that are entirely outside of your control. But sometimes you are what is behind it. You are behind the career slump. Maybe you have too high expectations. And I know that it is not something we like to say in a world where one can manifest anything. But there is such a thing about unrealistic expectations. I remember once listening to someone during a group coaching call who had a list of 73 criteria for dating, 73. And I remember thinking, well, good luck with that. And that same things happens also with careers. And I remember myself being quite idealistic, and I would say actually probably delusional, a decade or less ago, with my own career. So, I had drunk that Kool-Aid of you can make money, you can have fun, you get promoted, you can work in a supportive environment, you can learn, you can mentor, you can grow all the time, all at once. So it was my own version of everything, everywhere, all at once. But it was not helpful. And that is important for you to also take the temperature of your expectations. You might also be self-sabotaging. And this is more common than you think. And it's actually harder to uncover as well. That's the challenge. And I don't know, maybe you're suffering from the I don't belong here limiting belief, which causes you to exit before being pushed out. And usually that push out only happens in your head. Are you someone who takes all the air out of a room? Are you someone who is a perfectionist, a pain in the butt? Are you someone who plays the martyr, takes all the awful projects and then some? Are you someone who cannot distinguish between what is important and what is merely urgent? So anyway, you get my drift. There are many, many reasons that can explain why your career is not going the way you thought it should go. And it's also sometimes not just the ecosystem, Very often it is both external factors, the economy, as it is, the case right now in most Western economies, and internal ones, for example, a collaborative personality. So, of course, the easy option for us is to look outside ourselves to explain any lack of success. But while, again, external factors, they matter, they are usually only a small part of the equation. And it's probably the part that will get you the least far in correcting your trajectory. So that is really the first thing I want you to do when you feel in a career slump. What is behind that? So one thing that can be very helpful in that exercise is 360 feedback and executive coaching. So because to understand really the internal factors that hold you back, it's nice to be supported by someone who's gonna help you see things that you are not able to see yourself. Very often self-awareness is not enough. You need the mirror of how others actually perceive you. The good, the bad, the fabulous, the ugly. And yes, I agree, these are perceptions, but perceptions are what gets you hired, fired, promoted, or sidelined. So knowing them is priceless. So that's why a 360 is really helpful, especially if you're working with a great coach, because they can also help you recalibrate what needs to be recalibrated. So not just telling you what doesn't work well, but also how can you adjust it. Again, not all coaches are good or great. And sometimes you might need, a bit of a team of experts to address different dimensions of your challenges, because you need to keep in mind that it took you a lifetime to become who you are, and there is no judgment here. So it is unlikely to be a fast fix. Unless, of course, what people dislike about you is, I don't know, your haircut and your sartorial choices. In that case, it's easy peasy, but it's not likely that it's just going to be that. So it will require usually a bit of time and a bit of effort for you to, work these things. So that's really I would say, the foundational aspect of that. So in terms of tactics, what can you do to get outside of this career slump? So I would say the first thing I really like is to change the energy. I go to a conference. I love going to conferences, either on topics I am not familiar with or on topics I am familiar with, but in a different geography. So I really find it very re-energizing. It really gets my creative juices flowing, and it also creates great content for LinkedIn, which is good as well. I usually meet interesting people, and I mean, sometimes we stay in touch, sometimes we don't. Doesn't really matter. I always learn something. Like the key is really, ask questions, listen, enjoy the exchange. So again, that's the first thing I would say. Go to a conference. It's not that complicated. The second thing, change the scene. Take a trip. And again, whether it's in the context of a conference or as a vacation, changing environment really help take a step back and, regain perspective. I personally particularly enjoy a work/tourism trips, a mix of business meetings, events, visits, that for me is the best way to recharge, but also come back with a new plan, come back with a new ideas, and really shaking things up, preferably for me in the sun. I love the sun. But you also have the opportunity when you do this type of thing to learn what exists elsewhere. Very often we're very insular, and maybe to learn if another geography might be a better match for you. So we'll talk about that a bit later. The third way, I think, for you to get out of this career slump is to join a professional organization. So it is a great way for you to deepen your understanding of your industry, expand your network. It really allows you to channel your energy into something that is career related, and even if it's not tied to your current role. So you will learn new things, you're going to be exposed to new opportunities. It's a quick, relatively easy, fairly affordable way to shake things up. And my recommendations is to volunteer. Simply attending events, I mean, that's pleasant, but you won't really get much out of the organization that way. You get what you give. So being actively involved allow you to associate yourself with new and interesting projects. And often, it opens up entirely new perspective. It's also a great way to build a network. I found actually many jobs coming from people I volunteered at organizations that were finance organizations. Another way as well to kind of shake things up and get out of your career slump is, go back to school, take a course. It is a powerful way to reposition your career. New learnings spark energy, spark ideas, they expand your network, obviously, but also they add a new string to your bow when you're relaunching. It is not always cheap or easy. And again, there's a big difference between a 1 week executive program and an executive PhD, obviously, but it can really, really be effective for you to get out of a career slump, especially when that slump is coming from a mismatch between your credentials, your experience, and the market's appetite. So put you back, I would say, in the right space, thanks to the right schooling. Another thing I really, really like, and that I would say is for people who are already employed but are feeling that things are not going well, special projects. And I mean, that's a classic, and there's a reason it's a classic. Getting involved in special projects alongside your day job is a great way to re-energize, learning new things, meeting new people, but also showcasing your value within your organizations. And hopefully this will lead to the next point, which is changing roles internally. So again, if you're already employed, but you think, well, that's not really going great, my current role, look at changing role internally. And I want to discuss that a bit more. Changing role within the same organization really can be a breath of fresh air. It has some risk associated to that, obviously, but it's still far less risky than leaving for an entirely unknown territory, meaning a new company. And it may require a lateral move, which is fine. Not every career shift is an upward one. So here, start communicating what you want. Showcase your talents and achievements, back to my special projects or professional organization. People need to know you in order to support you. We tend to forget that. And one of the biggest challenges I have seen myself, but also in conversation with others, is our resistance to asking for a role change. We fear difficult conversation. We worry our bosses will think we're no longer motivated, and we will be the first one on the shopping block when the time comes, and the time always seems to come. So basically, we believe that it's easier to leave an organization versus having a real conversation within our current organization about our aspirations, our expectations, and potential new roles. And I think that is one of the biggest mistakes people, myself included, make. And again, this is another area where the coach can help you reframe, maybe we ask conversations, because these discussions are not always comfortable, let's be honest. But growth often, if not always, comes through difficult exchanges. So I really want to put the emphasis on that before looking outside. Can you do something inside? Then, well, you also need to know when to walk, and maybe changing organization. Again, for someone who's already employed, maybe it's the right thing, because sometimes it just is not the right fit. But be careful, this is a big risk. Understand clearly that what you're leaving behind, because difficult bosses and colleagues, they exist everywhere, trust me on that. If you're working already in a large organization, a reorganization may already be planned that will reshuffle everything and everyone in 6 months. So, if you're leaving for a boss or a colleague, maybe it's not worthwhile. I would say changing organization makes sense when problems are structural. For example, a flawed business model. Otherwise, it's really otherwise the risk is really about, trading an imperfect situation that for maybe a worse one unknowingly, and ending up with the short end of the stick, which might end up being actually unemployed. And then that's a different story altogether. The last thing I want to tell you about how to get yourself out of a career slump, and that is probably more for people who are unemployed, and it's change geography. And changing geography often makes the most sense for people who cannot find roles aligned with their experience and education. And I totally agree, this is a more daunting move, which is rooted in both external and internal factors. You may be in a region that is stagnant or declining, that undervalues experience. You know, if you live in geography that are quite aligned with ageism, for example, maybe the region is misaligned with your background, or maybe it just lacks opportunities in your field. Maybe your region is not strong in the industry you studied in or who you have experience in, and you just don't have the choice to go and check elsewhere, you know. And maybe it's something like you want to work in large organizations, but your geography is dominated by SMBs. You know? So, for example, I come from the north of France, and a lot of the industries there are retail, you know, and that was not something I was interested in. But basically, pretty much everyone who came to work in a large organization after my business school and stayed in the same part of France, they're all more or less associated with companies that are coming from that retail world. It is what it is. If you want to do something, you have to go elsewhere. So, and sometimes it's also just a mismatch of your personality and the place, even if it's where you grew up. Maybe you're seen as too ambitious for this environment, but you're perfectly suited for another one. That's also something I felt moving from France to Canada. So changing, again, countries or cities is risky, you know, especially if you're not well prepared. Really, really, really prepare yourself. But staying in an unsupportive environment can be the riskiest move of all. And that's something, you know, I really want you to think about. Sometimes not changing, not moving is actually riskier than changing, than moving. So that's the last point I wanted to make with how to shake things out of a career slump. And I hope this gives you, you know, a clearer view of what you can do if you find yourself in that situation. Something that happens to everyone. That's the thing I really want to be clear with you. Everyone at some point is in a career slump, and very often more than once. People might not say it, but it's absolutely, absolutely the case. I have yet to encounter an individual who never had a career slump. What is, you know, something that you really need to keep in mind is being proactive, communicating, using this time to reassess your priorities, your needs, your wants. All of that are really key to shaking things up. And again, remember, life moves in cycles. Nothing goes up forever. Sometimes things stagnate, sometimes they even regress. There is nothing wrong with that, as long as you are awake to what is happening and why. So again, I really hope it was helpful, because I know right now I meet a lot of people in career slumps. So I really, really hope it gets you excited about what you can do about it. Thank you so much. Wishing you a wonderful week, and talk to you next week. Bye-bye.